So I was talking to my homegirl, and we were talking about how the whole affirmative action thing has gotten out of hand um, in regards to people not understanding how it was meant to be used. It wasn't about just taking somebody who was a minority and getting them into college or getting them a job. It was about making sure that you had qualified minorities that would get these sort of positions. That's what it was about because um, the organizations, whether it was a school or some company, they still had to get the job done. So it wasn't in their best interest just to bring anybody along just because they're a minority. But because of that, you have this whole stigmatism when you talk about affirmative action. So anytime you have a black person that has made it, um, whether or not they were a product of affirmative action, there's this belief that they're not qualified and that on their own accord they can get to where they currently are, which is bullshit, right? So my homegirl was like, well, the only way to really get rid of that nasty label is to get rid of it, right? So the only way to remove the doubt so that um, other people aren't questioning you, oh, she's only here because she's black, or he only got the job because he's Hispanic. The only way to really get there is if you remove um, affirmative action and just say, look, every man for himself. Now, I agree with that. I do, but what she didn't understand was that you have the whole legacy thing, okay? Um, and as you know, where you go to school, where you go to college plays a big part in terms of the job you get, in terms of the connections and uh, people looking out for each other. For example, in Southern California, we have USC. Their alumni um, network, it's real. A lot of times people talk about it, but you can't see it. No, it's real. If you went to USC and you know the right person, it will work wonders for you. I've been in rooms where you've had head honchos talk about how, yeah, they're only really looking for other USC graduates. So where you go to school plays a big part in where you're going to end up working. Right? We can all agree on that. Um, Schools have reputations. If you look at it, for the most part, a lot of schools don't necessarily vary in quality, but what does vary is the school's perception, and that is what carries you whether you like it or not, right? Um, that's why you'll have certain companies that will only deal with certain schools. We only want to deal with people from Princeton because they have a reputation, right? And they have a certain standard, so we know they've already did the job for us. If you made it here, then you can get it done. So it's very important to understand how that factors into affirmative action and being accepted into college. Now, there's something called legacy that people don't want to look at because it's kind of informal. And it's pretty much where you have students who otherwise cannot get in on their own accord who get in to a school or university because their parents went there, they have family that went there, and the family donates money. Okay? It's real. It happens, but it's unofficial, right? It's not like affirmative action where it's, some sort of government-ran sort of action. It's not like that. It's off the record. Okay? Um, has anybody ever noticed that it hasn't really been revealed how you get selected into college? Ever notice how you just send off your application and you hope that you get in, but you never know for sure? And um, talk to somebody who got rejected, and they'll figure out that somebody else got in even though they had higher SAT scores, higher GPAs. They had more extracurricular activities, but the other person got in. You ever notice how it's never an exact science how they admit people into school? Now, everybody has their theories, but it's never put out there, and people don't want to understand why. Well, it's like that because that's how they can get the people in there that don't necessarily need to be there. It's how they sneak people in, right? People who otherwise couldn't make it, But because mommy and daddy cut a check, right? Because mommy and daddy grew up in a certain area, and mommy and daddy know the dean of this school, the dean of that school. Mommy and daddy cut a check every month or every year. The child is going to get in, but they can't come out and say it. So it exists because they throw the shroud of secrecy over how people actually get admitted, right? And it's true. It's there. It's real. It's not me pulling this out of my ass. I didn't go to an Ivy League, but I have friends that did, whether they're black, African, Middle Eastern, white, Hispanic, and we all talk relatively now and then. And I ask them how life is like. How competitive is it? And they'll tell you it's competitive, but then they'll also tell you that, man, there's a lot of people who are here, quite frankly, that should not be here. And I don't know why they're at Harvard or they're at Princeton or they're at Yale. I don't know how they got in. Really, I don't. And lo and behold, those kids tend to be the rich kids. Now, I'm not saying all, but a lot of them tend to be kids that come from wealthy families. And they're driving cars that you can only hope you can drive one day, right? And why? Well, mommy and daddy had the hookup. Grandma and grandma went there, and they donate money, and it's just a system to ensure that, hey, they get in as well. Right? If you want me to continue to give money to the school and support you and help fundraise and be part of this foundation and use my business connections, well, my grandson needs to get in, right? And I'm not saying that everybody who may be a legacy gets into a Ivy League school and the only reason why they're getting in is because they can't cut it academically. No. Yes, there are people who can cut it and they have a legacy. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. You're going to get in regardless, but you're also going to get in because, your grades are just where they need to be. But there's a significant amount of people who are at these top-notch institutions who don't deserve to be there. And guess what? Like I said before, they graduate. They get that label of going to that sort of upper crust sort of university. And guess what? They get that upper crust sort of job. But once again, middle class, lower class white people, they don't really see that. They don't understand it. I mean, yeah, you have affirmative action depending on, your school. And, and the way it's worded, it's not as clear-cut as we want to make it out to be. But, yeah, it goes on. But, how many qualified white people don't get into their school of choice because of affirmative action? Let's keep it real. How many do you think, right? As opposed to not getting in because they had to let Timmy in, and Timmy really couldn't cut it, but his mom and dad cut that check. How many? I mean, motherfuckers act like you can go to a certain university, Ivy League, or some other sort of school of that nature and that caliber, and there's black people running around everywhere. There's do-rags and Timberlands everywhere, and they're just getting in because they're black. And it's like, do you see that there? Go ahead. You go to these universities, and it's like, man, I don't see any people of color. So you don't even see it, and that's the part that's really annoying. It's not even visible. But people act as if affirmative action has made it to the point where you can step on any non-HBCU campus, and there's nothing but black people running around everywhere and Hispanic people running around everywhere because of affirmative action, and it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Like I said before, people have to understand that how different colleges operate in terms of who gets in and who doesn't get in. It's a big secret. No one knows. It's top secret. I've met people, and I've tried. Don't get me wrong. I've tried to pry. I've tried to probe. I'll throw out different theories, and I'll say, am I hot? Am I cold? And they'll say, yeah, you are, but then they'll throw me off because it's really one of those, I can't really tell you, right? For me at least, I personally think, they have some sort of system, but they allot certain spots for, some head honcho to come in and say, I need 10 spots, so, keep those open to me because I have some nieces and nephews and I have some friends who have children that need to get in. So, save me some spots. So apart from having their own unique system of how they, let people in and who qualifies and who doesn't, they have that right there. And, my question to you guys, how many spots do you think are allocated for affirmative action students, or, black students, as opposed to the children who come from prominent, wealthy families that play a big part in that, particular school? How many? Um, and like I said before, we're sitting up here and we forget that the college doesn't benefit just because they bring in somebody who's black. Because if they bring in somebody who's black um, or a minority and they're not prepared, they can't make it, and they somehow graduate them so that they can look good, but that person is ill-prepared to work in working America, it reflects upon them. Schools build their reputation because they go off, the students who graduate go off and they do well in working America, right? And they say, yeah, I give credit to Yale, I give credit to Harvard, and Harvard is like, yes, thank you, right? But if you go into working America and you fuck up and you fail, they're going to say, where did that person go? I don't know about that. I don't know if we're going to hire somebody else who came from that school, because the last person we hired just didn't get it done. So there's really no incentive, right? Even if affirmative action was working full throttle for universities to bring in underqualified African Americans or underqualified Hispanics or whoever, right? It's not what it's designed to do. So if anything, if you did see a black person who's in because of affirmative action, best believe that they can still get it done or they wouldn't be there. I mean, I'm talking to some of my buddies who are, affiliated with different schools and campuses across the U.S., and they always tell me how they'll get called in and they may talk to somebody who sits on the advisory board or whatnot, and they're asking, hey, do you know any other minorities that are interested that can qualify, right? Because, yeah, we have a certain amount of spots that are designed for people who come from a certain background, but they have to qualify. I talk about this with my boys all the time, and they're shaking their head because it's like, it's there. But they still want you to be qualified. So this whole affirmative action thing, it has little to do with just bringing on people, minorities who aren't qualified. And the fucked up part is you'll have, once again, middle class and lower class white people, they don't understand in terms of legacy and what that does in regards to people getting into these schools who can't qualify on their own. But because you have well-connected families, they don't care about that. See, the same shit, the fucked up part is the same shit that people will knock, the same lies and myths about affirmative action that are placed upon black people should be applied to those who are legacies, okay? Those who get in because mommy and daddy had money, because you'll see that a lot of them aren't qualified. And once again, this isn't just coming from a black male point of view, right? I've got this from everybody. White, Indian, it doesn't really matter. I've sat down with them, we've talked, we went to school together, whether it was middle school, high school, elementary school, and they will all say the same thing. There's a lot of people who are there simply because mommy and daddy have money, right? And they don't deserve to be there. But how many dumbass black guys or black girls or Latino men or women do you see? How many? Right? But let me stop there. It is what it is. America, I don't know what's going to happen with us, to be real with you, because we're so trained to turn on each other and miss who's really screwing us over, okay? And you have the middle class and lower class white people, time after time. You guys are always getting spun around, and you're blaming this minority group and that minority group, when in reality it's really the upper elite who is dicking you over, but at the same time convincing you that you're on the same team, you're on the same squad. So that's my vid. Y'all take it easy. God bless.